All right, today we're diving into a spiritual revolution that completely swept across India, challenging all kinds of rigid rules and hierarchies. This is the incredible story of the Bhakti movement, a powerful idea that opened up a whole new path to the divine, not through priests or complicated rituals, but right through the heart. And that brings us to the core question, doesn't it? What if the deepest, most profound connection you could have with the divine didn't require a priest or some complex ceremony or being born into the right family? What if, really, all it took was love? This was the radical idea that would set the stage for a massive transformation. So, to really get just how revolutionary the Bhakti movement was, we first have to understand the world it was born into. And let me tell you, it was a world defined by walls, both visible and invisible. Yeah, this slide really paints a picture of the problem. Pre-Bhakti society was basically a rigid pyramid. Your birth decided everything about your life, including your access to God. Religion was totally dominated by these complex Sanskrit rituals and expensive sacrifices, all controlled by a priestly class. So for pretty much everyone else, the lower castes, women, just the average person, the path to God was behind a locked gate. Spirituality was something that was done for you, not something you could do yourself. But then, into this incredibly rigid world came this powerful and, profoundly simple idea. A whole new path that was all about tearing down those walls. This was the path of devotion, or what we call bhakti. So what is bhakti exactly? Well, at its core, it's a direct line to God, built on this intensely personal devotion. It's all about an emotional connection, pure love, complete surrender, and just constantly keeping God in your thoughts. This was way more important than intellectual debates or complicated ceremonies. The really radical idea here was that your inner feeling mattered more than any external ritual you could perform. And this verse from the Bhagavad Gita really became a cornerstone for the entire movement. Just think about what it's saying. God doesn't need huge, expensive sacrifices. A simple leaf, a flower, a piece of fruit. If it's offered with genuine love, that's enough. The impact of this idea was just immense. It meant that spirituality was suddenly accessible to everyone, no matter your caste, your wealth, or your gender. That locked gate was just thrown wide open. Now, this powerful idea of devotion, it wasn't just one single thing. It kind of flowed into two major currents, almost like two streams that form one great river. We know them as Saguna and Nirguna Bhakti. Okay, let's break this down a bit. On one side, you've got the Nirguna path. For them, God is this universal, formless spirit, like an ocean of being with no specific attributes. This path pretty much rejected rituals and idols, and instead focused on inner knowledge and devotion. Then, on the other side, you have the Saguna path. Here, God was worshipped as a personal being with distinct forms and qualities. Think of Rama or Krishna. Rituals were simplified, and idols were seen as a physical way to focus your love and surrender. But here's the key. Even with these differences, both streams came from the same source, the belief that a personal, heartfelt connection was what really, truly mattered. Of course, ideas are just ideas until people bring them to life. And the Bhakti movement was carried across the entire subcontinent by these amazing, charismatic poet saints, whose words and songs just resonated with millions of people. First up, let's meet an absolute giant from the Nirguna tradition, Kabir. He was a 15th century mystic poet, but by trade, he was just a simple weaver. And that's not just some random biographical detail. His humble life was absolutely central to his radical message of equality. Kabir's philosophy was just sharp and totally uncompromising. He argued for one formless God that belonged to everyone, whether you called yourself Hindu or Muslim. He fiercely attacked idol worship, the complete injustice of the caste system, and any religious rituals that he saw as just empty and meaningless. The man was a true spiritual rebel. This famous little couplet of his just captures his spirit perfectly. What he's saying is that true wisdom isn't found in memorizing a bunch of old books, but in direct personal experience. It was a direct challenge to the authority of the priests, championing inner truth above everything else. Okay, now for a completely different but just as powerful voice from the Saguna, or with form tradition, Mirabai. She was a 16th century princess who ended up becoming one of the most famous female saints in all of Indian history. Mirabai's entire life was basically an act of devotional rebellion. See, she was born a princess, so she was expected to do her royal duties and live in obedience. But instead, she just rejected it all. She completely defied the patriarchal norms of her time and dedicated her entire being to her love for the god Krishna, who she saw as her divine husband. Her devotion wasn't just some private spiritual thing, it was a radical public statement about a woman's right to choose her own path. So you have all these radical ideas, all these defiant lives. What did it all lead to? Well, the legacy of the Bhakti movement is woven into the very fabric of modern India. It's everywhere. And this timeline, wow, it just gives you a sense of the incredible scale of this thing. This wasn't a single event. It was a slow, powerful wave that washed over the subcontinent for more than 1,000 years. It started way back in the 6th century with the Alvars and Nayanars in the south. 1,000 years later, their ideas are being echoed and reshaped by figures like Kabir in the north, and then even later by saints like Tukaram in the west. It was basically a continent-wide, centuries-long conversation about what faith really means. The impact of this movement was just transformative. Socially, it directly challenged the rigid caste system, and it created new spaces for women and other marginalized voices. Religiously, it shifted the focus away from impersonal rituals to a personal, accessible God. And culturally, its legacy is immense, because these saints spoke and sang in the languages of the common people, not elite Sanskrit. They sparked this massive boom in regional literature, poetry, and music. These are art forms that are still so vibrant today. And all of this brings us to one last really interesting thought. While the Bhakti movement absolutely challenged social structures, was its main goal actually social reform? Or was it offering people an emotional and spiritual escape from a really harsh and unequal world? It's a question that's worth pondering, and it reflects the complex, powerful, and truly enduring legacy of this revolution of the heart.